Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Scott Manning coming to you live from Scott Manning YouTube Sports Talk. I want to thank all of my loyal viewers for being with me here this morning. I know it's been over a week since I've been on the air, and I do apologize for that. I've had a long week this week. I've had a lot to talk about. I was going to go on the air last night after the first round of the NCAA Tournament, but I decided to hold off until this morning because I wanted to get all the notes and all the information I wrote down here, because I'm going to need a cheat sheet to get me through this morning, because basically, number one, we had a lot of upsets yesterday. And number two, I've got a lot of other stuff I want to talk about. So we're just going to go ahead and go right into the show. Let's have a great time. Let's enjoy each other's company for the next little bit. Let's have a great show. Well, first and foremost, my Final Four is intact. I had Duke facing Gonzaga, and then I had North Carolina facing Tennessee. Now, Tennessee had to come from behind yesterday in their game. But I will say this. The 5-12 matchups and the 7-10 matchups were a complete nightmare for me. The 5 and 12 seeds. The 12 seed was 3-1 against the 5 seed. The only 5 seed to escape this on last night was Auburn when they beat New Mexico State 78-77, when New Mexico State missed a three-pointer at the buzzer. And I apologize for that buzzer going off. It is my laundry. But today's laundry day in my house, but anyway. And you know, the only other interesting thing that happened for me as far as the NCAA tournament, UC Irvine is moving on, and they will face the 12-seeded Oregon Ducks, the only double-digit seeded matchup in the second round. And I'll get to that here in a bit. But first, I want to talk about some big things. First of all, Duke. They had no problems in their opening round game. R.J. Barrett, 26 points. Zion Williamson, 25 points. The first ever freshman duo to score 25 points or more ever in the history of the NCAA tournament. That is huge. But I want to talk about something else. There's another player that stuck out besides Zion, and his name is Ja Morant. He goes to Murray State. And on Thursday, Murray State shocked number 5 seeded Marquette 83-64. A lot of people think that's not a big surprise. However, Ja Morant, 17 points, 11 rebounds, 16 assists. The first triple-double in the NCAA tournament since 2012, when it was done by who? Draymond Green, who now plays for the Golden State Warriors. I figured I'd throw that out there. Marquette's Marcus Howard, 26 points. Sam Hauser, 16 points, 10 rebounds for Marquette. And here's a couple of other things that really impressed me about Murray State. Murray State, they shot 53.6% from the field. They shot 50% from beyond the arc. That is why Murray State got the big upset. One of the reasons why. I mean, Ja Morant was so hot, Marquette couldn't even stop him. He was unstoppable, and the triple-double proved it. And that was one of the most impressive things that I've seen so far. Now, I'm going to talk about Ja Morant here a little bit later in the show. But right now, I want to focus on some other things. What about number 12 Liberty shocking number 5 Mississippi State 80-76? The Liberty Flames. You know, they always talk about March Madness because of the madness part, and it stuck out. For Liberty, they got the job done. Caleb Holmesley, 30 points, 4 rebounds. A big game for him. Lavelle Cabell, 18 points, 2 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals. A big game for him. For Mississippi State, Quindary Witherspoon, 27 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, 1 block shot. Lamar Peters, 21 points, 5 assists. That was it for him. But here's a few other things that really impressed me about Liberty. They shot 46% from the field. They shot 80% at the free throw line. Yow. And they shot 48% from beyond the arc. That's how Liberty upset Mississippi State. Plain and simple. You know, they always talk about how crazy these 5-12 matchups are. This was the craziest one of them all. I didn't get to see the game because I had some other things I had to worry about. There was just too much going on yesterday. I just couldn't keep up. So that's why I'm reverting to the cheat sheet here this morning. So you have to kind of bear with me, and I understand some of you guys don't like the idea, but I got no choice. Literally. Now, if you think that was the upset of the day, I got some swampland in Florida to sell you. Or actually, I got some farmland to sell you. I got something to sell you out in Oregon. I don't know what it would be, but I have something to sell you out in Oregon. Just a little joke there. What about Oregon upsetting Wisconsin? 12-seeded Oregon and 5-seeded Wisconsin. Oregon got the job done 72-54. Peyton Pritchard, for Oregon, Peyton Pritchard, 19 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals. Lewis King, 17 points, 4 rebounds. Paul White, 14 points, 4 rebounds. For Wisconsin, Khalil Iverson, 12 points, 5 rebounds, 2 steals. Ethan Happ, 12 points, 8 rebounds. Dimitri Trice got shut down to nothing. And that was it for them. I mean, they got shut down. Listen to these numbers. For Oregon, Oregon almost shot 55% from the field. That's how they got the job done. They shot 81.8% from beyond the arc and 46.7% from, or 81.8% from the free throw line, and 46.7% from beyond the arc. For Wisconsin, Wisconsin got shut down to 33.3% from the field. They only shot 61.5% from the free throw line and only 20% from beyond the arc. That is how Oregon upset Wisconsin. And when you get shut down Dimitri Trice to almost nothing, that's huge. Ethan had 12 points, even averaging almost 20 points per game. And it's very unbelievable. However, it is going to be a very interesting game. This is an interesting game for all the right reasons. But I'm going to tell you right now, there's been a lot of people that have really impressed me here in the first round of the NCAA tournament so far. Now, we had a couple of other big upsets I want to talk about. 13-seeded UC Irvine upset number 4-seeded Kansas State. Kansas State, one of the Big 12 regular season co-champions, 70-64. UC Irvine had the game of their life. 19 points, 4 rebounds. For UC Irvine, Max Hazard, 19 points, 4 rebounds. Evan Leonard, 19.6 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 steals. Robert Cartwright, no relation to the Cartwrights from Bonanza, by the way, 10 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. For Kansas State, Kamir Stokes, 18 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. Makeel Mavin, 14 points, 12 rebounds. Dean Wade's absence from Kansas State was a real big blow to the Wildcats. UCI shot, it was very impressive. I didn't write the numbers down for him. I forgot to do that, and I do apologize for that. However, UC Irvine got the job done in the 4-13 matchups. A lot of people have already said that everything is going to be interesting. But UC Irvine is moving on to the next round. And now, the other major upset of the weekend, number 11 seeded Ohio State, number 6 seeded Iowa State. Ohio State is going to the next round after a 62-59 victory over Iowa State last night. Caleb Wesson, 21 points, 12 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals. A double-double for him. Keyshawn Woods, 19 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. Yusa Jallo, 11.6 rebounds, 2 assists, and 3 steals off the bench. For Iowa State, not much to brag about. Mario Shyok, 23 points, 5 rebounds, 3 steals. Lindell Wigginton, the Big 12 sixth man of the year, 14 points, 3 rebounds. How in the world did Ohio State pull it off? When you listen to these numbers, you're thinking, how in the world did Ohio State do it? Iowa State shot better from the field. 43.4% for Iowa State from the field to Ohio State's 39.7%. Ohio State did better at the free throw line. 78.6% for them to 70% at the free throw line for Iowa State. Iowa State shot just a little bit better from beyond the arc than Ohio State. 27.3% for Iowa State, I should be saying the Cyclones, to 25% for the Ohio State Buckeyes. Ohio State, they out-rebounded Iowa State during the ball game. Total rebounds, given out to Ohio State, 36-29. Offensive rebounds, 12-6. Ohio State took that category. That is how the Buckeyes got the job done. Bottom line. Now, those are just some of the games and some of the reaction from the first round. Now, the 7-10 matchups, I forgot to write those down. I should have done a little bit of a better job with that. However, I will say this. If you're looking for some big matchups, let's see. Minnesota upset Louisville in the first round. Florida shocked Nevada in the first round. The only 7 seed to come out of it unscathed was in fact Wofford. They were the only team that came out of the first round with the only 7-10 matchup that came out of it unscathed. And I'll say this though. And Iowa got a big win in the first round as well. That's good. That was an interesting scenario right there. Now, that was the first round. What do we need to expect in the second round today? Now, the Saturday matchups for the second round today, which begins at 12 noon, which begins in about an hour here on CBS. The first game of the first round will be Maryland versus LSU. That's a 12-10 matchup on CBS today. Maryland, they were one of the favorites to win the Big Ten tournament. They had an early round exit. LSU, they were actually one of the favorites to win the SEC tournament. But LSU coach Will Wade, when he was suspended, that kind of hurt LSU's chances right there. So, who would you pick? I have LSU beating Maryland here in the next round. Now, the other matchup on CBS today, 2:40. Number 2 seeded Kentucky will face number 7 Wofford. Now, Kentucky, will P.J. Washington play? There's a lot of questions that need to be answered there. He has a foot injury. Will P.J. Washington be a go? If he's not, Wofford could pull off the upset. It could happen. There's just something to think about there. The other CBS matchup today. Number 2 seeded Michigan will face number 10 seeded Florida. That's a 5:15 matchup. Michigan, they're coming off of a bad loss to Michigan State. They had no problems in their first round game. But you got to remember, Michigan lost the Big Ten championship game to Michigan State. Xavier Simpson, Jordan Poole, Charles Matthews, what will they do to Florida today? That remains to be seen. If Florida can find some way to hold those 4 guys to nothing, they can pull off the upset. There's something to think about there too. Now we get into the later matchups. 6:10 tonight on TNT. 6:10 p.m. Eastern time, I should say. Number 4 seeded Florida State versus number 12 seeded Murray State. Florida State, Terrence Mann, Trent Forrest, they can get the job done. They had no problems in their first round game. Murray State, John Morant, you know how dangerous he can be. But I'm going to say this. Murray State has a real good chance of pulling off an upset. If they could beat Marquette, if they played like they did against Marquette, it's going to be lights out. That's all there is to it. Could Murray State be the Loyola Chicago of 1 year ago? That remains to be seen. But I'm going to say this. I think we may be looking at a double-digit seeded team going to the Final Four. And a lot of people have said Murray State, Missouri Valley Conference. I'll get to that here in a bit. I'll get to that here in a little bit. All right, let's move on. The first matchup on TBS, 7:10 tonight. Number 1 seeded Gonzaga versus number 9 seeded Baylor. Gonzaga, they had an early round exit from the Mountain West Conference tournament. For the West Coast Conference tournament, I should say. And Baylor, they barely got in as a 9 seed. I see Gonzaga just running all over Baylor tonight. No doubt about it. Now, 7:45 tonight on CBS. Number 2 seeded Michigan State will face number 10 seeded Minnesota. These two teams faced off in the Big Ten tournament with Michigan State winning it. These two teams faced off with Michigan State winning it big. They've owned this year. No, wait a minute. All right, I messed up. These two did not face each other in the Big Ten tournament at all. But Michigan State has owned a series against Minnesota earlier this season. Now, for Michigan State, you got Matt McQuaid, Nick Ward. Will he be a factor? That remains to be seen there. And I'll tell you right now, if Nick Ward's a no-go, and if Minnesota can hold Matt McQuaid to nothing, Minnesota could possibly pull off the upset. And that's all there is to it. And now, the next game I want to talk about. Tonight at 8:40 on TNT, number 3 seeded Purdue will face number 6 seeded Villanova. These are the Villanova Wildcats that are the defending national champions led by the old man Phil Booth. Can he get the job done? Phil Booth, Eric Paschal. Look out for them. But Purdue's got a big guy, Carson Edwards. Look out for him. He's the best player that Purdue's got. If Villanova can somehow stop Carson Edwards, they have a shot. If not, say goodbye to the defending national champions. And the way it looks right now, we may have new national champions by the time it's all said and done. And now, The last but not least for the Saturday matchups, tonight at 9:40 on TBS. Number 4 Kansas will face number 5 Auburn in a big matchup here tonight. Kansas will face Auburn, and I'm going to tell you right now, Bruce Pearl is just thanking the good Lord he escaped over New Mexico State. And no, number 4 Kansas they did not even have a great season. They struggled on the road in Big 12 play. They didn't even win a share of the regular season conference championship. They lost a Big 12 conference tournament championship game over Iowa State. Iowa State's now out because of it. Can Kansas somehow salvage this season and win the national championship? That remains to be seen. No Udaka Azubuike. Think about that. No Silvio De Sousa. Think about that. And I mean, Kansas coach Bill Self had to change his lineup so many times, it's not even funny anymore. And now, those are the Saturday matchups. Let's look ahead to the Sunday matchups. There's a lot of big matchups here that need to be talked about. Number 2 Tennessee, and we start out the Sunday matchups at 12:10 on CBS. Number 2 seeded Tennessee against number 10 seeded Iowa. Tennessee, no problem with their first round game. They got the job done. Tennessee coach Rick Barnes said after their first round victory, he said, "We look ahead to Iowa, and we got a lot to think about there." Emerald Schofield, Grant Williams, the SEC Player of the Year, he proved why he was worthy of those honors. Now, Tennessee had to come from behind in their first round game to get the first victory of the season, to get their first victory of the tournament. Now, what about number 10 Iowa? Iowa struggled to the finish line, losing their last 4 games. And think about this. Iowa coach Fran McCaffrey was suspended for the last 4 games of the regular season. And they had trouble in the Big Ten tournament. And the bottom line is, Iowa couldn't do anything. Now, Iowa has to face a Tennessee squad. Now, Iowa's got some players too. Look at this. Iowa, Tennessee, think about it. Tennessee, I got to give the edge to the Volunteers because they got Schofield. They got Emerald Schofield, Grant Williams, and there's a lot to think about there. Now, the next matchup I want to talk about. Number 1 seed in North Carolina, and this is the 2:40 game on CBS. This is later in the afternoon. Number 1 seed in North Carolina will face number 9 seeded Washington. The Washington Huskies out of the Pac-12. North Carolina, Kobe White, Cameron Johnson and company. They can get the job done, and they can do it. So I got North Carolina taking that. Now Duke will face Central Florida. That's the 5:15 game on CBS. R.J. Barrett, Zion Williamson, that's all you need to know. Now, for the 6:10, this is 6:10 tomorrow night on TNT. Texas Tech will face Buffalo. We're talking about Texas Tech, the Big 12 co-champions of the regular season versus the MAC champion Buffalo Bulls. Jared Culver, David Moretti of Texas Tech, they were the best. They proved why they were one of the best teams in the Big 12 all season. And don't take the MAC lightly, people. I always say that all the time. Don't take the MAC lightly. Don't take the Buffalo Bulls lightly. They can get the job done too. Now, the next matchup. This is the 7:10 game on TBS tomorrow night on a Sunday. Virginia Tech faces Liberty. Liberty's coming off of a huge upset over Mississippi State. And Virginia Tech, they're coming off of a good first-round victory. Could Liberty do it again? Only time will tell that. Now, 7:45 tomorrow night on True TV. Number 1 seeded Virginia versus number 9 seeded Oklahoma. Virginia, Kyle Guy, Ty Jerome. They had to come from behind in their first-round game. They almost lost again in the first round. If this would have been 2 years in a row, it would have been a nightmare. But right now, in the next round, they're facing number 9 seeded Oklahoma with Lon Kruger and company. We're going to have to wait and see what happens there. Now, the 8:40 game Sunday night. This game will be on TNT. Number 3 seeded the Houston Cougars versus number 11 seeded Ohio State. Ohio State, this year, they couldn't do much anything in a regular season. They got into the tournament by the skin of their teeth. They got a huge first-round victory over the Big 12 Conference Tournament champion Iowa State Cyclones. Keep that in mind. But that was Iowa State. If they can play like they did against Iowa State, they should beat Houston. However, Kelvin Sampson and the Houston Cougars say they're ready for the next round, and they were just grateful to be there. And last but certainly not least, the last matchup in the first round, number 12 Oregon versus the 12-seeded Oregon Ducks versus number 13 UC Irvine, the Anteaters. Yes, Irvine, they do call them the Anteaters. And that is the 9:40 game Sunday night on TBS. Keep in mind what Oregon did to Wisconsin in the first round. Keep in mind what UC Irvine, they did in the first round too. This is the only double-digit seeded matchup in all of the next round. So I'm going to say this now. Whoever wants it the most is going to get it. Bottom line. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for my closing thoughts. And I want to go back to Ja Morant for just a few minutes. You know, Shannon Sharpe of Fox Sports made a very interesting point about Ja Morant. He says he's going to be a first-round pick in this year's upcoming NBA draft if he decides to go pro. You know something? I was thinking about this the other day. I can see Ja Morant going first round or going 1 or 2 in the draft. A lot of people have said, oh, we didn't get to see much of him because he's in the Missouri Valley Conference. They get no recognition. Oh. Well, let me tell you something. Ja Morant averaged 20 points a game and 10 assists per game all season. He was one of the best players. He is one of those players that gets overlooked because of the conference that he's in. I know they're in the Missouri Valley Conference. I understand that. But let me tell you something. Ja Morant deserves a lot more respect than what he's getting right now. And if this game, and if the triple-double doesn't prove it to you, and what he did and what Murray State did to Marquette in the first round, you got a problem. But I'm going to tell you right now, everybody's been talking about Zion and all that, and everybody's had the Zion craze. Well, let me tell you something. I'm starting to look the other way. Ja Morant is going to be a first-round pick. I'm not sure if he's going to go number 1. Zion Williamson may go number 1 in the draft. But let me tell you something. Ja Morant could possibly go number 2. I can see that happening. And if the NBA and some of these teams that need help can get it right, and if they can get Ja Morant, they're going to be in for a treat. And let me tell you something, and I'll say this too. After the way Ja Morant played, I could see Murray State getting to at least the Elite 8, possibly to the Final 4. Could I possibly see that out of Ohio State? No. Ohio State's not going to the Final 4. You can forget that. But Murray State, they could be the Loyola Chicago of 1 year ago. I've not forgotten about Loyola Chicago's performance last year. Could we be seeing Murray State in the Final 4? Only time will tell that. But I will say this. Ja Morant has really shown me a lot. He's shown me a lot more maturity. He's a mature player. He's a great player. He doesn't get frustrated. And he's a guard, one of the best guards in college basketball that nobody pays any attention to. He's the next, as far as I'm concerned, he's the next James Harden. He's the next Russell Westbrook. And that's all there is to it. And you guys can laugh at me all you want. But the point is, Ja Morant, he's going to be big in the NBA. And that's all there is to it. Bottom line. All right, folks, I'm going to go ahead and get on out of here. I want to thank you guys so much for being with me here this morning. I know this is an impromptu show. Please come back tonight at about, let me see here. I'm thinking about either 11:30 or midnight to have a wrap-up, to do a quick wrap-up show and to get you ready. And I've already got you ready for Sunday, so you won't have to worry about that. And I want to thank you guys so much for being with me here this evening. I'll probably be back about 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning for the wrap-up show. Thank you guys so much for being with me. You guys have a fantastic Saturday. Thank you so much for being with me, and God bless. Goodbye, everybody, and thank you.